A lot of people think that to get started on your company's AI implementation, you need maybe to wait till next year, you need to hire some more people, you need to go through more trainings, and none of that stuff is bad. But I came up with this process that allows you to go from not really knowing where to start to suddenly being ready to start by next week. And it's a really powerful process because it's so simple. It's 3 steps only, and it recognizes something about AI that I don't feel like you hear a lot. That AI itself, the AI options that we have are actually quite limited. There's lots of tools, but there's only 4 main archetypes of AI that we have to deal with. And if we can simplify it down to just a couple steps and 4 AI archetypes, we suddenly have a formula for being able to immediately get started with AI in our companies. Today's content is based on this AI implementation handbook. It's available for free on my website. The link is in the description below. And this goes into detail on exactly how to go through this process, what the 3 steps are, how you think through them, some of the things that might come your way as you do it. Today's video is going to be a walkthrough of this guide, but if you have questions as you run into some details, dive in to the guide itself. So the guide takes you through this process. It's a very simple process that you can do with your team, and you'll find a lot of clarity by the end of this process. So let's go ahead and jump into today's content. First thing to realize is that all of the tools that you're looking at in AI today can be broken down basically into 4 different archetypes of AI tools. Now, there's fringes on the edges. People could argue with me about this, but ultimately there's 4 major types of AI tools that you need to understand really well because they're the ones that are available to you to use in your implementations. The other types out there, they might be really niche, you might be able to use them, but if you learn these 4 well, you're going to be able to immediately get started with AI. So I'm going to talk about the grandfather of all of them, and I call him Charles. For each of these, I've created a character just to help you kind of associate it with what this type of AI model does. So Charles is a deep learning model. If you look at him, you'll see that he is kind of that posh British gentleman from maybe Sherlock Holmes era. He's got tons of money. He's very expensive. He is very bespoke. Everything that he does is uniquely tailored. His suit is made by the best tailors in London. And this deep learning concept, it got introduced in the 1980s. It didn't really take off until the 2000s. It had already been happening in big tech companies for quite some time, roughly the past 20 years. And it has been very powerful. A lot of the breakthroughs that Google had been getting was happening in deep learning, and deep learning spawned all of the models that are available to you today. The problem is it's super expensive because it's super custom. But the cool thing is that in 2022, when OpenAI had the major breakthrough with ChatGPT, large language models became on the scene. And I'm going to show you that one here in a second. Large language models, which we'll personify with Larry the large language model. Large language models are a type of deep learning model. They're very, very expensive to train, but the good news for you is that they're pre-trained, so you don't have to pay to do that. So this sparked a revolution, not just in the idea that we can actually interact with a computer using human language. We can summarize text data out of a database into an email to a customer. But more importantly, it took this really expensive type of deep learning and made it available to anyone at a very low cost. It's kind of like the industrial revolution of AI. So once we get to know large language models, if you don't learn any of the other models, you've already got 70, maybe 80% of the implementation that you need. I'm going to tell you for small, medium-sized businesses, large language models are going to be the primary go-to for what you do. But there's two others I want to mention because they do fall into place in several different implementations. The next one is May. May represents image generation models. And I'm throwing a couple different kinds of things together here. The architecture of them is different, but for your purposes as a business owner, as somebody implementing AI in a business, you just need to kind of know what's available to you. And so the one that really kind of shocked the world was when OpenAI released DALL-E in 2022. It actually came out before ChatGPT public release, but it was so realistic. No one had quite seen it happening this way before. And in here, I'll just note that we talk about image generation. So, generating images like the one that you see on the screen here, recognizing images. So, a thing that you might need to do at some point is to grab a document or something and take a screenshot of it and extract the text in a meaningful way. It's good at those type of models can do those type of things really well. And now we're starting to see them even generate movies. So image generation models are very powerful. For businesses, the biggest thing is pulling, documents into data. They're really good at that. The last one that we'll talk about before we jump into an actual demo is Mike. And Mike is text to speech, speech to text. He's actually not that shocking because he's been around for a while. There were some pretty big breakthroughs in this in 2016, and it's still all in this vein of deep learning and that Charles model. We're kind of used to it. I think we've gotten a little bit shocked by how good it's gotten with some of the stuff that's come out from OpenAI. But ultimately, this is just a model that allows you to, for example, take phone call recordings, or you've seen it, the transcribe function in Zoom or something like that, and it can take your speech and convert it down into text. There might be cases where you take text and go to speech, like in a translator, but most business contexts, you're going from speech down to text. And so again, this is something that you need to know about. You're not going to use it a lot, but there are places where it's very, very useful. So with all that said, let's jump into the demo of exactly how you go through this process so that you can take your team through it and get that clarity about exactly where to start your AI implementation. I'm going to demonstrate this in Draw.io. You can use something else if you like. So you come in here, it's drawio.com or diagrams.net or draw.io. Those all go here. Hit start. It's going to ask you doing a new diagram or open an existing. Hit new. And then give it some kind of name here. So we'll call this AI process enhancement diagram. Really call it whatever you want. Hit create. You can save it where you want. You will have to connect something up here. So I'm going to just save it right here in my drive for simplicity. And that is going to make a connection to your Google Drive in my case. And then I want to show you there's these awesome little icons here that go along with this process, the document. So I'll show you how to get these really quick, and then we'll get started on our process. So I'm going to get rid of that, and you'll go up to File, and then go Open Library From, and then you're going to go to URL. Okay, and then in the description below, there's a page on the website, makethejump.ai, where you can go and get the URL that you need to put into here. So I will put that in real quick. So you'll get a URL, put it in here, hit open, and there you go. So you've got the markers right here. They're all here, and you can use them for yourself in your projects. You're welcome to use them however you'd like. Okay, so now you are set up. You're going to go through your business processes and diagram those. And in the interest of time, what I'm going to do is import a business process that I already am familiar with. This is roughly the business process of a couple of different businesses that I worked in. Just copied the wrong thing. So I'm going to use this business process from a manufacturing organization that does customized manufacturing. And I've worked in several companies that do this over the years. So this is kind of a consolidation of different ones. I'll explain it really quick and then we'll go through the process together. So only you know your business and you'll have to come up with that on your own. But it should be pretty easy to do if you've got the right people in the room that really know these processes. So in this business, it's all about getting some requirements from a customer that have come in through various channels and assembling those into a coherent ask for a supplier to make a product. Usually it's a personalized product of some kind. There's probably a logo going on it or some kind of customization that's unique to that client. And then we have to find the supplier that we think is the best one that can give us, a reasonable quote, and then we have to get that back to the customer. So all these different ways of interacting with customers. So you've got recorded calls, you've got emails, you've got texts, you've got the necessity of creating previews so the client can say, yes, this is what I'm looking for. And then you have to communicate this to the people that are going to make it, whether that's in your own factory or in this business process, it's going out and looking for suppliers externally and giving this back to the customer. So you get suppliers and then you create a quote and then you reach out to the customer via email, follow up with call. So let's jump into this process. For each of these steps, we're going to go through it and we're going to evaluate, is it primarily creative, represented by a light bulb, or is it primarily mechanical, represented by the gear? Mechanical can be things that you think of as creative, but if it really comes down to, is there a very, very defined process, or does it rely on sparks of creativity, imagination, or personality? And a lot of this is discussed in the handbook, so I won't go into all of those details. If you have questions, jump into the handbook to get more there. So call recordings, import call recordings. That is mechanical because we, the calls were creative, but the call recordings, they're mechanical. And you understand that this is just one piece of the business process. So I recommend don't do your whole business at once or it might get lost. Have the team that knows it best do it for that area. And then you can have different teams do different pieces. So transcribe recordings, is that mechanical or creative? I would say that's also mechanical. The reason it's mechanical is, yes, right now you may have had somebody doing that manually, but it's still a mechanical process because you can evaluate very clearly whether it was right or wrong. So it's mechanical whether or not it was being done manually. Import emails, also mechanical. Import texts, also mechanical. Now, create preview pictures. That is a bit of both. So I'm going to put, there's definitely an aspect of creative that goes to that, but there's also an aspect of mechanical that goes to it because it's pretty easy to evaluate based on all of the information that came, what the client was looking for. So this is going to be a place where we go, all right, maybe we can break this down a little bit more. So I'll explain that in a minute. Let's go ahead and sign the rest of them. So assemble a requirements document. That is a little bit of both as well. But let's talk through that. So your requirements document, it's a summary of all the recordings and the calls and everything, along with, any email, like photos or logos that have come along. So the creativity part is really, this is a really important point. The step itself is essentially mechanical. But the creation of that template and the way that template is put together, that is creative. So you're going to send probably a PDF of your requirements doc. Now, in some business models, you might send this back to the customer for approval. In other ones, you send it straight on to the supplier. That PDF, especially if it's going back to the customer, it should wow them. It should be amazing. You need creativity infused to that. It's got to look good. It's got to have the right information. So that's creative. But sitting in this business process, it's fundamentally mechanical because you have a very clear amount of requirements that have come in, and you've got these preview pictures. So we're going to take the light bulb off of here because inside of the step it's mechanical. Okay, so building business processes is fundamentally creative. Okay, I'm going to say that again. Building the systems of your business is creative. So if you go into the McDonald's supply of all their business processes, you're going to find everything's mechanical because they've tried to remove the chance for humans to mess it up. Obviously, you've been to McDonald's that are clean and well run, and been to McDonald's that are nasty and people are rude. So obviously humans still have a huge influence on the result, but as much as possible, they've made everything automatic. So you would see gears everywhere in their process, but the process itself is fundamentally creative. So keep that in mind. So we've got this assemble requirements document. Now this supplier search, this part is still a mechanical process. There might be some creativity, especially if it's, oh, my Uncle Carl has a factory or something like that. But typically, you don't want to rely on that as your business process. Now, then you solicit supplier quotes. That's essentially mechanical. There might be some relationships that have been built up with suppliers that might be creative. If that's a really important part of your business, on your business model, you might say, actually, we do really high dollar items. These relationships are very important. For example, let's say that you're making something that needs AI chips, and you want to have a really good relationship with NVIDIA, and you do not want to get them mad because you can't buy the chips from anywhere else yet. So that would be a good situation to maybe put a light bulb here instead. Most cases, this is mechanical. And then you're going to come down, calculate the cost, and create a quote. So this one, if you're in this kind of business model, it better be mechanical. There can be room for some human decision, but that should be part of the mechanical process. It shouldn't be a gut feeling because otherwise you can really easily lose money. So you've got a mechanical process to come up with a quote, and then you need to create a customer quote form. So again, that is mechanical. There's not the form itself is definitely going to be creative, but the process of creating this individual form for this individual customer, that's mechanical. Now we're going to send a customer via email. Okay, this is where we get a little bit of both. So we have the mechanical side of, attaching it. There's probably a template that you want and a tone you want, but you might, depending on the business, it might also be creative because there's a customer relationship here that you're fostering. You need to be very careful not to mess that up. So I'm going to put both of these. You'll notice the ones that you have both, you want to break these down a little bit more if you can, so that you kind of force yourself to think through the mechanical versus the creative part. And then final part is follow up with a call. So again, I'm going to put both of these. And the reason is that there's a process of setting a reminder for yourself that's very mechanical, but the call itself, can you imagine if you had an AI call your customer? I'm talking about a business of higher volume, where the customer's used to getting good customer service, and a bot says, "Hello, this is company Acme something something something. We just want to know we want to let you know that your order form is waiting on you. And no matter how human-like it sounds, you're going to really hurt the relationship. Now, if you're doing a low dollar item where the customer expects an AI call, then maybe this is completely mechanical. So that's something you have to look at in your business. All right. So now we've got everything broken down in this sense. Before we assign which AI models might fit on some of these, let's quickly break down these ones that got both. And some of these are just going to be based on your business model. So create preview pictures. We've got a process of, we've got some files that have probably come in from the client, and we need to generate that picture on the product. Now, there's a creative aspect of kind of guessing what the client's going to like, but ultimately, it depends on your business. And so I'm going to just say that the businesses that I've worked in, this has been much less of a creative endeavor and much more of a mechanical process where they say, hey, I want this logo, and I want this logo placed in this location, and that's it. And maybe they say, hey, I want this eagle, but I don't want it to look so fearsome. Okay, now you're dealing with a creative process. So we might, if we were going to have something option like that, I would need to build a customer approval process for the art approval process that would be separate from this main one. And in that one, then we would have some light bulbs around questions like that. So I'll take that out and we'll call this mechanical. Okay, so I didn't really break this one down. See, I got a little extra arrow there. See if I can undo that. Whoa. So just heads up, be careful when you grab these. So I didn't break it down because ultimately I decided for the business model I'm representing here is mechanical. Now come down here, send to customer via email. So there is two things going on here. And this is important because if you haven't thought about your business with this dichotomy of creative and mechanical, your process steps often will combine the two because there's no reason to have separated them in the past. But now we need to do it. So we need to have a personal note. Okay, man, how are the kids doing? If you tried to do this with AI, too big of a chance of messing it up. I would recommend not doing that. So there's a personal note aspect, but it's probably in an entire email to your customer, probably one or two sentences. Hey, noticed on Facebook, that Johnny just graduated. Congratulations. Something like that. Send to customer via email, but the part of compose email, the email is going to have the quote form. It's going to have some legalese. It's basically a template with a form attached and maybe some customized text related to, hey, if you get it in by this time, we can do X and Y. So we have a personal note and an email. I'm going to break these into two steps then, like we did here, and we're going to put them one after the other. So if you look here, the personal note can come first, and then the email will use the personal note. So the personal note is creative, and the email is mechanical. And this is a very important thing when you're using AI. The thing to remember is that the creativity, AI can display creativity as long as it has creativity injected into it. The same way that paint can display creativity as long as it has creativity injected into it. But it can't generate creativity. So you'll notice that so many of your business steps, that the thing you think is completely creative, only a small aspect is creative. And the rest of it is boilerplate. And so AI is great at handling boilerplate. So you have your customer service representative write two sentences that are personal and then incorporate those into the email template. And same thing with the follow-up call. So the call is going to be, needs to be your customer service rep. So we'll well, I should have done it the other way. Break this here. But the scheduling process, schedule call reminders, that is mechanical. So, just sometimes maybe this seems a little obvious, but it's important to really force yourself to go through this thinking process so that you've got everything clear. So now we've broken out to where we only have a creative versus mechanical. That's pretty cool how much of this process is mechanical. Now, just because it's mechanical doesn't mean it's automated yet. This is a very, very important concept. In fact, if you're an entrepreneur, you probably haven't automated it yet because you're needing to try different things out, and automation takes time. And once you automate something, it tends to stay that way, which is good, but it needs to be the right process. So just because it's mechanical, don't look at that gear and say it's already automated. There's plenty of businesses I've worked in where most of these gears are still manual and they're waiting to be automated. And this is something that you'll find when you go through this process. You'll find that many of the things that you thought, oh, I wish AI could do that, you don't actually need what we mean by AI these days, which is, that ability to summarize text and reason and act kind of like a human, write things or generate images. You actually just need good old-fashioned automation. And this is something I stress in the handbook. Good old-fashioned automation is usually preferable to AI. I'm going to say that again. Good old-fashioned automation is typically preferable because it's consistent and predictable. AI sometimes will vary its outputs. You can't always guess what it's going to do, but straight up automation, you can. So you're going to go through here now, and we're going to look at each one of these and say, can we add some AI to this process? So import call recordings. I just think that's an automated process that you can put that right into an automation workflow. I can't think of any AI. You're just moving files. So you don't need an AI process, which is good. We prefer not to use AI processes. Keep that in mind. So now transcribe recordings. All right, there we go. So Mike is perfect for that. So we'll put Mike just slightly over there. Mike is great at transcribing recordings. He can do text to speech and speech to text. So we're not saying which one we're going to use. We're just noting that we're going to use one of these type of models. And that's important because we can get hung up in these details. Ultimately, all these models do something along the same lines. So we don't need to get to that level of detail in this process. We can leave that for the implementation. Import emails, that is mechanical. Import text, also mechanical. Create preview pictures. Now, preview pictures is May, okay, because this is great for image generators. Whereas, hey, give me a picture of a pen based on this reference image and add this logo to this place. Or, here's a reference image of a pen I did with a different customer logo. Remove that logo and add this logo, something like that. The implementation, and I should probably stress this, that image generators is the widest gamut of all of these. I'm throwing in the ability to read images out, throwing in the ability to generate images, even to generate movies. There are a lot of different things it can do, but if you have a rough feel for it, you can make the decision which one to use once you get down into the details. Now your requirements document, now we're looking at something that's going to have some text generated. You're going to have a mixture here. So as much of it as possible would be great to use automated processes. Like hey, I want the picture to go here. I've got a template. I want to insert things here. But there's a very, very important piece here that you're going to need to put in all the information from these recordings, emails, and texts are all going to have to be summarized somehow in here. And so that is a great use of Larry, the LLM. So large language models are excellent at text summarization, and they can generate tables, they can do all kinds of stuff like that. So you want to use it within the process. You don't just throw all of these pieces to the LLM and say, give me a quote form, because it's not going to be consistent enough. Okay, what you want to do is you want to have a template that is consistent, and then you say, summarize all these for this section of the template. Summarize this piece for this section of the template. Generate rows based on these, let's say, accessories that are going to go into the product. Those are things you want to give the small pieces to the large language model, and then keep it a standard template so that you get good, consistent results. Now, search for suppliers. Boy, LLM is a great thing again for this. So you are aware of, we're starting to see with like Perplexity and ChatGPT are getting pretty good at searching the internet and summarizing things for you. I do want to point out that technically that search functionality is not actually an LLM doing the search. That's an agent, and then it's summarizing with an LLM. And so the thing to realize here is that the AI that you're using at this step, and you could have multiple pieces of AI coming together here, that it's one piece. So we're calling out the AI that you can add to your business process that might not have been available a few years ago, but it's just one piece. So the search for suppliers, there's a good chance that there's a Google search happening, and maybe if you're doing international sourcing, could be an Alibaba search. And then you may turn to something like Perplexity or ChatGPT to do part of the search for you as well. Now, solicit supplier quotes. That depends on your business model. You could write automated emails to the suppliers. Maybe you're in a country, there's certain cultures where you just got to call them on the phone. So I'm not going to put AI here. It would be possible in some business models that you would generate an AI email that would go out to suppliers. Again, if you want to keep it personal, remember that injection of a personal note is an option if you want to save time, but you still want to have some creativity and personality injected. Then calculate cost and create quote. This one I highly recommend great care being taken on this process. So you want to make sure you don't mess it up. And with AI models, especially these big pre-trained models, they're pre-trained on general information. They're not great at the specifics of your business. Now, you can do some training to these models, and that process has gotten much easier over the recent year or two. But you're typically going to want to be careful here. So if you have a good automated system that's working for you, keep that in place and enhance it. Don't let the AI completely control this process. And if you do, get a really good review process in place. So I'm going to just pull down Charles here. Charles is the custom deep learning model, or we just say he's a custom AI model. You might think about using something like this here, where you could take historical quote data and then historical profit, and then you could compare a bunch of the inputs that went into this and say, this type of order with these types of what are called parameters that came in. So, and it can evaluate all kinds of things. You might even say, like, you import all the call recordings and all the emails and all the text, and it might notice, hey, for customers that responded within 2 days to every communication, we ended up making 20% profit. Whereas customers that took 5 days to respond, we tended to lose money. And you could literally add a piece to your quoting process that adjusts, that you don't probably tell your customer that, but you adjust your quote based on how good of a customer that they are. And this is where you start to have some really powerful internal knowledge. But as we said, it's expensive. So this is probably not where you're going to start your process, but it's something to keep in mind. And again, you don't give your whole step to this guy. You use it as a weight. So you think of it like your quote comes out and it's sitting here, like a scale, and you use these AI decisions to tip the scale in the direction that you want. You don't let the AI control the whole thing. So you maybe say, all right, AI, should we increase by a percentage? Give me a suggestion based on the data that we've fed into you. All right, next piece, create customer quote form. This is very similar to the requirements document. You might be able, there's a good chance you can use an LLM here. It may be something that it's just so straightforward that you just use templates. So I'm putting this here if you can think of that. And then we will do personal note to customer. So this is creative. We don't get to touch it with AI. Now, remember, we broke this out. So we can use an LLM on the compose part because we've taken all the creativity out. We're injecting the creativity in. Okay, so it's legal to inject creativity in as long as you've done that outside. And then schedule a call reminder. You probably don't need any kind of AI here. There might be a thing where you do one of these guys, you use the Charles, and if it's, you know how Siri it'll notice, your schedule, it'll look at your calendar. Maybe you want to do that, probably a waste of time in most businesses. So just, schedule it 24 hours from now or schedule it 4 days from now. And then the follow-up with a call, we don't get to touch it because it's creative. Now we're going to go through and we're going to add this benefits versus cost at all the AI decision points. So we'll start with transcribe recordings. If you go to the document, the handbook, the suggestion here is to weight based on whether it's a pre-trained model or not. And so since we don't know a lot of the details of what the implementation is going to be, really the cost here is going to be just a 1 in most cases, unless you have something like this, Charles here. Now, if you know for sure that there's a pre-trained model that's very expensive, or to your business it's very expensive, you might want to put a 2 or a 3 depending on kind of what your scale is. The goal here is to create a ratio, and so it's going to depend on your business. If you're doing $1 billion of business a year, then maybe the numbers that are going in here are in the millions, the denominator is millions. And maybe if you're just starting out, that's hundreds or even tens or ones. So the goal is to get a ratio. The benefit here. So the benefit is based on whether you can reduce cost by automation. You have to really think about it like this. Okay, if I can save, I should say this. It also depends on what you're currently doing. So if you're currently hand transcribing recordings, then you are going to look at who's doing that. If it's a personal assistant overseas and you can't use them elsewhere in your business, then once you start using AI, you will stop sending business that way. Okay, so this is the lowest form of increasing your profits and making more money, is by stopping to pay someone. You just don't do business with them anymore, or internally you let them go. probably should be rare, because if you've already hired them and they're still working for you, hopefully that they're a good employee and they could be used elsewhere if they were able to be elevated. So remember, your goal is always to elevate. Now, I'm also going to guess that in a lot of businesses, there are no transcriptions happening because it was just too troublesome. And so instead, what was probably happening in a lot of the businesses I have worked in is the salesperson took some notes after the call, and that's what went into the system. And so what you can also go here is, all right, now that we have the ability using AI, so sometimes AI creates an option you didn't have before. And so let's say now that we've got the ability using AI to transcribe, how much money is that going to save us? Try to be realistic here. The answer might be zero. Maybe the salespeople are doing a great job. Maybe. Have any of them made a mistake? Do you think there's a risk of that? If they made a mistake, how big would the cost be? So you might be able to say, well, if we had the call recordings transcribed, we have a chance of catching, $10,000 of mistakes a year, depending on your business model. That could be a huge number or a small number. You also might say, hey, if we do this, then the salespeople don't have to write a summary afterwards. Maybe that's a way that they could maybe make more sales. If you can find a way to do that. Now, again, it depends on the business. It may be the case that the salesperson really needs to do that summary for their own benefit, and you can't get rid of it. But let's say that you could. Okay, so we get rid of the salesperson spending 10 minutes per call. All right, so this is just a calculation. Okay, they spend 10 minutes per call transcribing it. Now it's transcribed and summarized for them, so they're not going to miss anything. Now that 10 minutes could be used on making more sales. Boom, we've elevated somebody really important. So then we say, all right, how many calls do they do a day? And if we can save them 10 minutes per call, let's say they do, I don't know, I'm not in sales, so this might be a totally off number. Let's say we do 15 calls a day. Wow, we're saving 150 minutes a day of transcription. That seems a little high. But whatever that number is, you go, okay, now how many sales do they make per day, or maybe averaged out? All right, so let's say that we could get that time back. We can calculate per salesperson how much time we're going to make, and you can get a very accurate number for that. So this one, if you went down that route, you may end up saying, well, we could make, I think we could get another $80,000 of sales. And I'm going to use this in annually. So I'll say annually in my case. So let's say we do $80,000 of sales annually. Your business use case might be different. Just make sure it's consistent between comparisons. That's the only important thing. You're just getting a ratio. Now, if you, again, maybe 80 to 1, maybe it is more difficult than a 1 in terms of cost. Maybe that costs you more than $1,000 a year. My guess is it won't, because there's good models for that, and you can plug them right in. If you have to go out and hire, let's say you come out and hire my consulting company to implement one of these, we're not going to charge you just $1,000 for something like that, probably. And so, maybe you're going to go, okay, well, that's going to be a 4 because I don't have anybody internally that can handle it. I'm just throwing numbers out, of course. So you have to evaluate what's the cost of the model, and do I have people internally that have the ability to handle it? Now, if you say, let's say I go out and I get a quote and it comes back at $5,000 to set up this piece of the automation, and then I go, well, can I go get someone trained? Get someone trained really quick and then drop that down to 1. Or if you're sure you're going to get them trained in time, then put that in. All right, and we'll do one more here. This process, I'm just trying to demonstrate the process, and the rest of it I'll leave to you to do for yourself. So let's pick another one that could really save us some time. So I think a really good one would be this compose email. Let's talk about this one. So this is one where we're injecting we're injecting the personal note, and we're going to say cost is a 1 because it's a large language model. These guys are really cheap and they're really good at this type of thing. So the benefit, let's think through this benefit. So let's start with the simplest one always. How much time can we save? Well, we've got, one thing you should be doing is you should start tracking these processes the way they are currently. If you can get some of that data, or even if it's just a day or two, I'll tell you, if you'll track your processes for 2 days, and you'll get so much more clarity for where you're really spending your time. So you don't have to, it has to be statistically significant or something like that. Yeah, that'd be great, but nobody has that. So get something usable. So sometimes you might think, oh yeah, I'm sure this only takes them 15 minutes. And they go, actually, putting this email together tends to take me 45 minutes per customer. All right, so now we're starting to see where we can put stuff. So let's say they say, hey, it takes me 30 minutes a customer right now. Well, you go, how much time does it take to write that personal note to the customer? And they go, well, I guess it only takes about 2 minutes. All right, so we've got 2 minutes here. And now, so the benefit is we're going to save you 43 minutes. I'm sorry, I said 30 minutes. So we'll say we can save you 28 minutes. So we can save you 28 minutes. How many do you do a day? You can get that number from them. Just look at the last week or look at a representative sample. All right, so let's say that we're saving 4 a day. So now we go, okay, so we're saving 4 a day. And again, it's about, roughly we're saving you 2 hours a day. Maybe you won't get numbers like that. Maybe that's not realistic for your business. Maybe you've automated it a lot already and that's, you've squeezed a lot of it out already with basic automations. But let's say you get 2 hours a day. Now you're going to start asking yourself a question. So if you can't reduce headcount, which shouldn't be your go-to, but we'll start with the lowest level and work up. If you can't reduce headcount and you can't elevate the person, there's no benefit. This is an important concept. You're not actually making money if the person now has 2 hours extra per day and they're playing a Facebook game or something. It doesn't help. So you have to figure out, you have to keep going through the thinking process. You have to ask yourself, what can I do with this person if I can elevate them? So one might be, hey, we have 7 customer service representatives. If we can save 2 hours a day on average per each, then one of them we don't need. Oh, we actually have somebody that's not doing so well. We're going to be wanting to get rid of them and we're going to hire somebody new. Now we're just not going to hire someone new. That's an option. Lowest level, but an option. Sometimes a good option. But more often what you're doing is you're going, all right, this person's a rock star. What could they do better if we could put them into something else? Well, they actually can make sales calls. Okay, now we're starting to go down that path. How much could they sell? Or maybe this person is so good at process optimization. So if we could get them freed up a little bit, then we could, let's say that one of these people, we can totally move them to a different position. And if we can move to that position, again, depends on your company. So that's the way that you think through it. So let's say in this case here, we say, okay, we can take our best person and free them up for half a day. And they love doing cold sales calls or warm sales calls or something. And so we're going to start moving them into that direction. And so we think that, we can make an extra 40,000 a year if we can do that successfully. And so what you're getting here is you might get some really surprising numbers. It's not actually AI that's doing that for you. What's happening is you're starting to think in terms of value creation. And what you'll also find is that this calculate cost and create quote, this one was the one that seemed really promising. Let me just do that one really quick as an example. So you're building probably a deep learning model here, and you're feeding a bunch of data. First of all, you've got to have good data in the first place. If you haven't been intentionally collecting good data, you're going to have to start now and you won't be able to use it right away. So let's say the cost here is, again, just throwing a number out here, 50K. And this is saying that we're 1K per unit. All right, the benefit that it depends on, can you make $1 million mistake if you go with the wrong customer? Or, are you able to successfully pad with more profit using this? And maybe your benefit is, maybe you could do 500K extra per year. Okay. But it costs 50K to do it. Well, when you go through and calculate your ratios, that's a 40 and that's only a 10. And so sometimes you'll find that the coolest AI implementations are not the ones you should start with. Not that it's a bad idea to do, but usually you're going to find these kind of hidden gems where if you can nail it, you can transform your business at very little cost.